4 minutes. That's all it took. 4 minutes to fall from the sky. About the same time it takes to toast a slice of bread. In those 4 minutes, 228 souls plummeted 38,000 feet into the dark Atlantic Ocean. This is the story of how one of Aviation's most sophisticated aircraft became the Titanic of the skies. May 31, 2009. Rio de Janeiro's International Airport buzzes with evening activity. Among the travelers preparing to board Air France Flight 447 to Paris, nobody suspects this will become one of aviation's most haunting mysteries. The Airbus A330 waiting at the gate is nearly new, delivered to Air France just 4 years earlier. It's a masterpiece of modern engineering, equipped with every safety system imaginable. In the cockpit, 3 pilots prepare for the 11-hour journey across the Atlantic. Captain Marc Dubois, 58 years old, carries 11,000 flight hours in his logbook. Seated beside him, First Officer Pierre-Cedric Bonin, just censured, represents the new generation of pilots trained entirely on computer-controlled aircraft. In the jump seat, First Officer David Robert, 37, serves as the relief pilot, ready to give the others rest during the long night ahead. But something is different about this crew tonight. They've just spent 3 days in Rio, and there are quiet signs of fatigue. Bonin brought his wife on the trip. Robert has been working double duty as a management pilot, flying little in recent months. They're about to fly through the window of circadian low, that cruel period between 2 and 6 a.m. when the human body and mind struggle most to stay alert. As passengers settle into their seats, families returning from vacation, business travelers heading home, the pilots review their flight plan. The weather ahead looks challenging. They'll cross the Intertropical Convergence Zone, a notorious belt near the equator where storms can reach 60,000 feet, towering far above any airliner's cruising altitude. These aren't ordinary storms. They contain something particularly dangerous, ice crystals, that can overwhelm even the most advanced sensors. The crew discusses this risk. They've flown this route many times. They carry extra fuel to navigate around the worst cells. They brief the 9 flight attendants about possible turbulence. Everything seems routine, professional, under control. What they don't discuss is a series of incidents over the past year. More than 9 Air France flights have reported a strange phenomenon. Ice crystals clogging their airspeed sensors, causing temporary loss of speed indications. The airline has circulated safety bulletins. There's even a procedure practiced in simulators. But that training was done at low altitude, where the margins for error are completely different from the thin air at 35,000 feet. At 10:29 p.m. local time, Flight 447 begins its takeoff roll. The powerful engines spool up, pushing the aircraft down the runway and into the Brazilian night. The lights of Rio fade behind them as they climb northeast, following the coast before turning out over the endless black Atlantic. Everything is normal. Everything is perfect. In less than 4 hours, everything will be gone. The flight settles into its rhythm. At 35,000 feet, the Airbus cruises smoothly through the darkness. Below, the Brazilian coast gives way to the featureless expanse of the Atlantic. Above, stars scattered across the sky. The autopilot flies the aircraft with digital precision while the pilots monitor systems and chat quietly. Around 1 a.m. UTC, Captain Dubois leaves the cockpit for his scheduled rest period. This is standard procedure on long flights. The less experienced Bonin moves to the captain's seat and takes command. Robert, the relief pilot, slides into the right seat. 2 first officers, both capable, both trained, now control a 200-ton aircraft carrying 228 people over the darkest part of the ocean. They see them on radar, towering cells of the Intertropical Convergence Zone, massive storms painted in angry reds and yellows on their weather display. Robert adjusts the radar gain, studying the returns carefully. The storms form a wall across their path, but there are gaps, corridors where they can thread through. They make a small course correction, turning 12 degrees left, deviating from their planned route without informing air traffic control. It seems minor at the time, just a slight adjustment to avoid the worst of the weather. But this deviation will later make it nearly impossible to locate the wreckage. At 2:08 a.m., something changes. The cockpit voice recorder captures a new sound, rain hammering against the windscreen. Then a smell, sharp and distinctive, ozone. The signature scent of electrical charge building in the atmosphere. They're entering the heart of the storm system. Temperature spikes in the cabin. Ice crystals, soft but voluminous, begin battering the aircraft's exterior. These aren't ordinary ice particles. They're a phenomenon unique to tropical thunderstorms. Supercooled water droplets mixed with snow crystals, creating a slush that can overwhelm heating elements and clog sensors in seconds. The pilots remain calm. They've trained for this. Bonin reduces speed to turbulence, penetration speed, a standard precaution. The autopilot responds smoothly, reducing thrust. Outside, the drumming of ice crystals intensifies. Inside, the cockpit remains steady, systems functioning perfectly. Then, at 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 5 seconds UTC, without warning, chaos erupts. The autopilot disconnects with a loud cavalry charge warning. The autothrust disengages. Wind gusts slam the aircraft, banking it sharply right. Bonin grabs his side stick, shouting, "I have control," and simultaneously something impossible happens on the instruments before him. The airspeed indication plummets from 275 knots to 60 knots in an instant. Obviously wrong, impossibly wrong. But the computers don't know that. They see conflicting data from the 3 independent air data systems. The pitot tubes, those critical sensors that measure airspeed, are clogged with ice crystals. With unreliable data flooding the flight computers, the aircraft does exactly what it's programmed to do. It gives up. The flight control system degrades from normal law to alternate law. The sophisticated protections that prevent the aircraft from stalling, from exceeding safe bank angles, from doing anything dangerous, suddenly vanish. And the pilots, startled and confused, don't yet understand what they've lost. In the span of seconds, Bonin's world transforms from routine to nightmare. The autopilot is gone. The autothrust is gone. The flight directors, those reassuring command bars that show pilots exactly how to fly, disappear and reappear, displaying confusing information. 10 different warning messages cascade across the central display, each triggering its own alert chime. Bonin reacts instinctively to the bank and the false altitude loss, pulling back on his side stick. The nose pitches up, up, up. The aircraft begins climbing at an astounding 7,000 feet per minute. 7 times the normal rate. But there's a terrible problem with this reaction. At 35,000 feet, near the aircraft's maximum altitude, the engines barely have enough power to maintain level flight, let alone climb. The Airbus is trading speed for altitude, bleeding precious airspeed with every second. From 275 knots to 220, then 200D, then 180. The aircraft rockets upward past 36,000 feet, then 37,000, climbing toward a ceiling it can never sustain. Robert, the relief pilot now in the monitoring seat, tries to make sense of the electronic warnings scrolling past. He reads them aloud, but too fast, too unclear. We've lost the speeds. Alternate law. But he doesn't emphasize what this means. The aircraft has lost its protections. It can stall now. It will stall if they're not careful. What's happening? Bonin asks, fighting to keep the aircraft level as it rocks from side to side. In alternate law, the roll control is twice as sensitive. Every input he makes gets magnified, causing the aircraft to oscillate wildly. He's over-controlling, making it worse, but he doesn't realize it. Watch your speed. Robert shouts, finally noticing the extreme nose-up attitude. You're climbing. Descend, descend. Bonin responds, okay, I'm descending. But his inputs are timid. The nose drops slightly, but the aircraft continues climbing at 4,000 feet per minute. They blast through 37,500 feet, their maximum certified altitude. The aircraft is now in a regime where it was never meant to fly, where the air is so thin that the margin between flying too fast and flying too slow has shrunk to almost nothing. At 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 51 seconds, the stall warning begins. A loud, unmistakable sound, stall, stall, stall. But incredibly, inexplicably, Bonin's reaction is exactly wrong. Instead of pushing forward to lower the nose and gain speed, he pulls back harder, pitching the nose up to 16 degrees. This is the paradox at the heart of the tragedy. In Bonin's training, in his experience on the Airbus, pulling back and adding thrust was always the answer. During wind zero recovery, during terrain avoidance, the procedure was simple. Pitch up, full thrust, let the computer's protections prevent a stall. He's doing exactly what he was trained to do. But the computer's protections are gone. The aircraft is no longer protected by normal law, and at 38,000 feet, with insufficient thrust and an extreme nose-up attitude, the Airbus does something it should never do, something its designers thought nearly impossible. It stalls completely. The aerodynamic stall is total and devastating. The wings, pitched at an impossible angle to the oncoming air, simply stop generating lift. The aircraft doesn't dive nose first, as you might imagine. Instead, it falls almost flat, like a leaf tumbling from a tree, descending at nearly 11,000 feet per minute. Inside the cockpit, the physical sensations are bizarre and contradictory. Severe turbulence shakes the airframe, but it's different from normal turbulence. Higher frequency, more violent. The nose points up between 10 and 16 degrees, yet they're falling like a stone. Outside, the roar of wind hitting the aircraft from below creates an otherworldly sound. This stall warning continues its insistent cry, stall, stall, stall. But then, cruelly, it stops. Not because the stall has ended, but because the computer calculates they're falling so fast that the airspeed must be false. So it silences the warning. When the warning stops, Bonin believes the danger has passed. I think we have crazy speed, he says, reaching for the speed. He thinks they're going too fast, when in reality they're barely flying at all. At 2 hours, 11 minutes, and 42 seconds, Captain Dubois returns to the cockpit after being summoned by the altitude warning. He's been gone less than 2 minutes, but he walks into a scene of utter chaos. The aircraft is passing through 35,000 feet in a descent, the same altitude he left them at. Warning lights blaze across the panel. Both pilots are making control inputs, shouting over each other. "What are you doing?" he demands. "What's happening?" "I don't know what's happening," Robert responds, desperation clear in his voice. "We're losing control of the aircraft," Bonin adds. The captain tries to make sense of the impossible situation. They've descended 3,000 feet in the minute he's been gone. The nose points up, yet they're falling. None of it makes sense. He hasn't been briefed. He doesn't know about the initial climb, the stall, the loss of protections. He's trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Through 25,000 feet, then 20,000. The pilots try different strategies. Nose down, nose up, power back, power forward. Nothing works because they haven't identified the fundamental problem. They're in a stall and have been for over a minute. The recovery is simple in theory. Lower the nose, reduce the angle of attack, let the aircraft accelerate, but nobody says the word stall. Nobody diagnoses the actual emergency. At 15,000 feet, Bonin inexplicably announces, "I've been in toga for a while." Toga means take off, go around, full thrust with nose up. The configuration for maximum climb performance. He's been holding the stick back, commanding a climb, trying to arrest their descent with thrust and attitude alone. No, 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 the captain finally shouts, understanding at last. "Don't climb." Robert pushes his stick forward, trying to lower the nose, but Bonin is still pulling back. The aircraft averages their inputs and does nothing. They're at 4,000 feet, then 2,000. Time has run out. At 2 hours, 14 minutes, and 28 seconds UTC, Air France Flight 447 impacts the Atlantic Ocean at a descent rate of 10,900 feet per minute, hitting the water at a 45-degree angle. The forces are equivalent to falling from a 46-story building directly onto concrete. The Airbus disintegrates instantly into thousands of pieces. All 228 people aboard die immediately. For hours, nobody knows what happened. The aircraft simply vanished from a remote stretch of ocean beyond radar coverage, its position known only from automated maintenance messages sent minutes before the crash. When dawn breaks on June 1, 2009, search aircraft find the first floating debris scattered across miles of ocean. Bodies are recovered, seat cushions, luggage, pieces of fuselage, but the black boxers, the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder, lie 12,800 feet below the surface in absolute darkness. For nearly 2 years, multiple search expeditions scanned thousands of square miles of ocean floor, finding nothing. Then, on April 2, 2011, robots finally locate the main wreckage field. The black boxes are recovered, miraculously intact. When investigators download the data, they discover a story almost too devastating to believe. No mechanical failure, no terrorist act, no unsurvivable weather, just a temporary loss of airspeed indication caused by ice crystals, followed by a series of human errors compounded by gaps in training, confusion about automation, and a fundamental misunderstanding of the aircraft's state. The investigation reveals brutal truths. The pilots never identified the stall despite continuous warnings. The training they received didn't prepare them for heel-toed stall recovery. The Airbus's automation, designed to protect pilots from mistakes, instead created a false sense of security. When that automation failed and the aircraft degraded to alternate law, the pilots didn't fully understand what they had lost. Bonin's reaction to pull back on the stick, while catastrophically wrong, made sense within his limited experience. In Normallah, you can't stall an Airbus by pulling back. The computer prevents it. He had trained for windier and terrain avoidance, where maximum pitch and thrust is correct. But at 38,000 feet, in alternate law, those same inputs killed everyone aboard. The accident transformed aviation safety. Airlines worldwide now train pilots extensively in high-altitude stall recognition and recovery. The memory items for unreliable airspeed now emphasize maintaining pitch and thrust first, troubleshooting later. Pitot tubes were redesigned. Stall warning systems were improved. The industry learned, as it always does, written in tragedy. But perhaps the deepest lesson is simpler. Understand your aircraft completely. No, not just how systems work, but how they fail. Never forget the fundamentals of flying. Pitch plus power equals performance. When confused, fly the aircraft first. Solve the problem second. The Titanic of the skies fell because, in 4 critical minutes, that simple truth was forgotten. 228 people paid the price for a lesson the aviation world would never forget. The black boxers revealed everything, and aviation would never be the same.